This is Linda Smith, and I'm with the Utah Parent Center. I'm a parent consultant, and I want to welcome you here today. We have Leah Lobato, who is an employer relations specialist with Utah State Office of Rehabilitation, and she works right in the main state office, and it is part of the Medicaid Infant Stretch-Year Grant, and funded through Utah State Office of Rehabilitation. And the mission of this position is to help promote the employment and retention of individuals with disabilities in competitive employment. With this position, she is responsible for networking and connecting with state, regional, and national employers. Leah coordinates with the Department of Workforce Services and Workability Utah on various projects supporting employment of individuals with disabilities. Leah's had many years of experience with individuals in varying areas of services, and I have worked with her. She has worked with adolescents with mental health issues. She has also coordinated housing affairs for individuals with disabilities in the independent living environment. She has also worked closely with the Department of Workforce Services with Choose to Work services. And Choose to Work, just so you know, is another service along with vocational rehabilitation services that young adults and adults with disabilities want to consider. It's an innovative service provided as a partnership between the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation and the Department of Workforce Services to promote the competitive employment of individuals with disabilities. So I'm going to turn the time over to Leah, and she can go from there.
Great, thank you. That's probably okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. First off, I want to thank Linda for the introduction, and if there's any questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask those as we move along. I prefer to just answer them as we go through the process and wait until the end. So feel free to get those questions in if you have any questions that come up. Okay, the title of the presentation is Essential Skills for Finding, Getting, and Keeping a Job. And it takes a second for slides to come up, so if I delay just a second, just excuse me for that. First off, I want to give a definition of what is competitive employment. It is defined at the federal level as work that is performed on a full or part-time basis, averaging at least 20 hours per week for each pay period and for which an individual is compensated in accordance with the Fair Standards Labor Act. So we really, the work that I do, I really am looking at competitive employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. Though I do work with individuals that might be working in sheltered workshops or other situations and settings, my goal is to get people to competitive employment. So why people with disabilities are hired? Here are some of the typical myths that I hear when I talk to employers. There's a higher turnover. They believe that individuals with disabilities are more likely to leave a job. Excessive absences, less productive, that there's a safety risk. I like to often turn that myth around saying they already have a disability, why would they be unsafe and want another disability? So if individuals with disabilities are typically much more safe than employers often give them credit for. Too costly or demanding, so accommodations or other supports. The belief is that those accommodations might be very costly, or that the individual with a disability will be demanding on the supervisor. And the last thing is that they won't fit in, that for some reason or another they're going to be ostracized or feel outside of the typical workforce that works at that employer. So now I'd like to talk about some of the reasons to employ people with disabilities, and these are the realities. These are statistics and facts that have been proven. They're more likely to stay on the job. Typically, an individual with a disability has really struggled to find employment and find an employer that they feel is supportive of them. And so typically, once they find a job, they stay on the job. They do not leave the job. They're very loyal and dedicated to their employers. 81 to 93% rated above average in performance. So individuals who are employed with a disability, they typically really do their best to try and be as adequate, doing everything that they need to do for an employer, asking and making sure that they're following up with what they need to do. Attendance is same or better than the non-disabled. Typically, they're very good about making sure that they're on time, that they're there when they're supposed to be, and that they're attending as they're supposed to be. And as I mentioned before, their safety rates are significantly lower. They do not want another disability. Most employers report no effect to the cost, and that's 90% of employers who report that. And they represent an enormous market niche. There's an enormous number of individuals with disabilities who have training and education, have skills and abilities, and are really being underutilized in the workforce. This quote is from Thomas J. Donahue, who's President and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The quote is, "Once an overlooked talent pool, people with disabilities are contributing to the American economy in ways never imagined." So if the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is really looking at how people with disabilities can fit into the workforce, we really need to start looking at it on a local level. I want to talk a little bit about some of the resources that exist out there. The first slide here is a screenshot of the Workability Utah page. It's www.workabilityutah.org. This is a great website. This website has a ton of information. If you take a look at the tabs across the top, you have Going to Work. So it's information and support on how to go to work. The next tab is geared towards employers, hiring your workforce, ADA and employment. Next is Social Security and work incentives, healthcare and medical assistance, youth in transition, so really the transition age group, 14 to 26 is really what we're looking at when we talk about transition. And then community living, access and services in community living as needs. If you look down the left side, there's a link there to get the Workability CD-ROM. This is a two-sided CD, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we move on here. And you can access that and get a copy there. And at the bottom of that page, you'll see PWD job openings. We'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go through this, but remember that that is on this website as well. So here's the Workability CD. This is what the CD looks like. It's two-sided. I know that's a little small to see, but you can see that the first is businesses, so it's hiring people with disabilities, and the second side is identifying jobs, opportunities for people with disabilities. So when I say two-sided, it's not like you're going to flip it over like you used to do on old record. It's two-sided, meaning we're looking at the dual customer approach. We're looking at the business and the individual with the disability and how both of those can work together to support each other and the supports that are out there for each of those two communities. So as you can see, this next slide will show you, this is a shot of the information that comes up on the disc for Utah State Office of Rehabilitation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move along as well, but I just wanted to show you some of the stuff in the, on the disc. And then here's some stuff for business. Here's the ADA overview, really to give some information about the ADA. The nice thing about this disc is it is interactive. So if you're on a computer that has a web access, you can link to the Job Accommodation Network, other resources. You know, it really does allow you to link to quite a few things on the web. So now back to vocational rehabilitation. It's called VR. It's also Utah State Office of Rehabilitation, or USOR. So I like to really make the point that you don't want to get confused with those names. It is all the same agency. It is the same people. And vocational rehabilitation is a state and federally funded program. So there are VR agencies in every state in the United States, as well as the territories. Some states divide vocational rehabilitation for the blind separate from the general population. So it's just something to be aware of if you're in another state and you're looking at VR services. Our website, www.usor.utah.gov. And really what vocational rehabilitation is in place for is to help people with disabilities prepare for work and find a job so they can live more independently. Now here's a list of typical services that vocational rehabilitation can offer. Counseling and guidance, medical services and treatment, assistive technology, training and education, job placement, and then follow-up services. And I really like to point out that though this is really geared towards the client, these are the services the client's going to receive. When I talk to employers, these are also the services that I say is going to benefit an employer. So if you think about counseling and guidance, we're really helping an individual to pin down what they're going to be good at or what they're going to like to do and help them figure out, what direction they'd like to head, as well as mental health counseling. We do a lot of services with individuals with disabilities on the restorative end, so helping them get their medications managed, their mental health managed, their disability managed prior to some of the other services we provide. The assistive technology, we'll start to look at different things that are out there to support individuals with disabilities, both in a home and work environment, and the assistive technology that's going to be out there to help them with work. Training and education. We really do look at what the individual's done in the past. Are there skills and abilities that are transferable? Is it something where they're going to need more training? Is it going to be short-term training? Something that's a 2-year program or a 4-year program is a possibility. We also have on-the-job training opportunities that have come up with vocational rehabilitation, and we work with employers to offset the training costs for an individual on-the-job situation. So, for example, we've recently spoken with the Painters and Tapers Union in Salt Lake and talked about how we might be able to offset the training costs for individuals to learn how to be a painter or a taper, and how we can get them employed with that specific employers that contract and work with the union. Then job placement. Vocational rehabilitation helps with job placement. We make connections with employers. We work with building relationships with employers, and VR counselors and choose to work specialists, as we'll talk about in a few slides coming up, really do provide a lot of support to individuals to help them figure out employers that they might like to work for, or employers that have openings at the time. And then follow-up services. With the follow-up services, we provide at least 90 days of follow-up services with the individuals that we support. So once they receive a job offer, then we're going to at least stick with them for 90 days to make sure that that first 3 months, which is often difficult for any person in a new job, is successful. Talking to the supervisor if need be, talking to the client who we're working with, making sure that they're showing up on time, that the training's happening, that things are going smoothly for them. And then other services as needed. If an individual comes through vocational rehabilitation and they need a uniform or tools or other specific things for their job, we help with getting those in place before they get there, when they receive a job opportunity. The next slide is the Department of Labor. In Utah, the Department of Labor is the Department of Workforce Services, so DWS is what you might know of in Utah. Their website, www.jobs.utah.gov, and their mission is to provide employment and support services for our customers to improve their economic opportunities. If you have never gotten onto the jobs.utah.gov website, I would be getting on there and playing with that site. There is a ton of information on there. This is just a small screenshot that shows the main list for job seekers, but as you see across the top, it's for job seekers, for employers, and then basic information and services. So under job seekers, you have Find a Job, which is a great way to just find out any employers that are posting with DWS and kind of figure out what jobs are out there. The electronic job board is another posting there, and you can put in very specific criteria of what you want it to look up. So you can find part-time jobs in Sandy that are only working Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. You really can do a search very specifically there. Then you have a link for job fairs. This is a list of all the job fairs that are occurring that have been posted with the Department of Workforce Services. Child care, economic information. This is really finding out more about a job and whether it's going to be something to look forward to the future. Is this a job that's going to be, hiring? What's the need? How many jobs are out there? What is the wage? Careers.utah.gov, that's a great website. And actually, I'm going to show you some screenshots of the next coming things, so just hold on for those ones. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see a specific link for Just for Youth, and that's a great website for youth specifically, and there is some information on there for youth with disabilities. And then you have workshops. Department of Workforce Services has recently really revamped their workshop program. All their workshops are free, such as interviewing skills, resume building. There's a 4-day workshop called COPE, which is really, as any person I've ever referred to that workshop has come back and said it was one of the best workshops they could have ever done. It really talks about life skills and different things that might need to be in place to help you be more successful in life. So here's a couple screenshots. Actually, first off, let's talk about job seekers, some information they have for Department of Workforce Services for job seekers. Under Find a Job, they have master applications. I always recommend that individuals who are looking for a job have a master application filled out, that you pull up a blank application and you fill that out and you have somebody review that and check over it, check this information, so that you have your information ready to go when you apply for a job, that you're not digging through a file, that you're not digging through a folder, looking through phones for phone numbers or dates, and you have it all written out and make sure that you check all your information. Master applications are really handy to have when you go into an employer and they say, would you like to apply now? Well, that way you don't have to take it home with you and do an application, or if you have the opportunity, a lot of employers are doing online applications, which I know has its drawbacks, but it does allow you to be able to at least begin filling that out with some accurate information. They have other job search tools, so information there that helps with job search, things that might help you with building your resume and other things like interview skills, and it gives you some feedback and input on those things. There's also the classified ads. Under Find a Job, you can find every newspaper in Utah that has a classified ads for employment. They list them there, so you can easily click on that. You don't have to go buy a paper. You can find those job postings there. Then the electronic job board we talked a little bit about, and how you can search by area, shift, etc. We talked about the job fairs and the economic information. Okay, now this is the careers.utah.gov. This is a way for people to really investigate some careers. It gives you an opportunity to kind of look about what's out there, what the education and training is, who provides that education and training, how to find those jobs, where to look, who to talk to, what the hot jobs in Utah are. So it gives you some really concise information about employment opportunities and things that exist in Utah. Now, I talked a little bit about the job seeker guides. The job seeker guides are online, but you also can get a hard copy at DWS if you're interested. But these job seeker guides are very great, full of great information. There's specific ones on cover letters. So how do you write a cover letter? What does it need to look like? Grooming, interview techniques, job applications, job success skills, looking for a job, resume, skill identification, tips for teens, which I highly recommend for students. This is a great little publication that they put out, tips for finding the right job. And then they have the Utah Careers with a Future, which is really gives some more information about career ladders and Utah's 5-star occupations. Basically, the Department of Workforce Services has looked at the occupations in Utah and given them a star rating. 5-star is the highest rating that they can get. It's based on wage, openings, training and education necessary, labor market information that comes into play, and they really have rated these occupations so you kind of have an idea of what jobs are out there that have a great possibility in the future. For career ladders, I'm going to actually, here, this is a shot of eSkills. eSkills is a great web application that is on the Department of Workforce Services page that gives you a ton of information. If you have a student who's looking at what they want to do for work, this gives you some great information to look at. The example I like to use is I was talking to a student who said they wanted to be a CNA. They really wanted to do medical work, and they wanted to work in the medical field, and they thought the CNA was the way to go. Well, we started looking at, if you look at number 5, it's detailed work activities. And then number 7 is task frequency report, and number 8 is task important list. So we started pulling those up for a CNA. Well, first things on there are things such as lifting, then you have dealing with bodily fluids, and all those kind of things that come along with being a CNA. Well, the student started looking at that and saying, I thought I was just like walking people around the halls when they were, recuperating from a surgery. I didn't realize I was going to be, having to deal with bodily fluids, and that I was going to have to be lifting people out of beds, and I was going to have to do this, that, and the other. So it really was a way for this individual student to look at what's required for the job, and did she really want to do that. So she started looking at other medical careers that were related and found something else that worked better for what she really wanted to do. It really does give a very detailed list of the activities that are necessary for the job, how often you're going to be doing them, and the importance of those activities. Also tells you how much education you're going to need, just a ton of information there that really can help you kind of get a better idea of the direction you want to go with your career and your future. And under the other resources, number 10, you have DWS Careers with the Future, which gives some more information about some of those hot jobs that DWS has outlined. Now here's the career ladder. I like to really look at this with students. Oh, it went too far. Just a second. Okay, the career ladder here. This we really look at this with students. A lot of times when you're talking to people who have either been out of the workforce for a while or new individuals, students going into a career, they often think they're going to jump right into work and they're going to be making $15 an hour, they're going to have benefits and they're going to get vacation time and they're going to have everything that they want right when they start a job. And that's not very realistic. Those of us who've been in the workforce a long time, those of us who work with students know that that's not really what's going to happen. So I like to talk about the career ladder. What a career ladder is an opportunity to kind of look at the entry-level positions and then how they can build into higher-level positions within a company. So a lot of times we look at real specific entry-level things. You know, CNA is one of those entry-level. You know, a lube tech at Jiffy Lube who then would get more training and education and then become a mechanic, you know, and have some more different things that would happen to get them training and education to further them in their career. Mechanics are a great one on a career ladder. You often enter as a mechanic, you know, doing a lot of more physical labor, but as you progress through the field and get more training and education, which oftentimes employers will provide for you, once you've entered a career with an employer, they really do look at building the workforce they have and offer training opportunities that can then get raises and advancement opportunities and other things. So looking at a career ladder, you think about where you started with your profession and maybe some of the steps you've taken and how you got to that position, but it really gives an opportunity to talk about the steps that are involved to getting up to that $15, $20 an hour job where you have benefits and vacation time, because it doesn't happen from the get-go. The Career Center, really on that website, there's the employment, it talks about job trends, resources, and then the careers, the Utah Career Guide. It has a personality assessment in that career guide that talks about personality traits and how that might relate to possible careers. So it's a great resource there that you can take. It's pretty simple questions. Would you rather do this or that? Have, you know, what about this kind of thing compared to this kind of thing? And you answer those questions and it gives you kind of a personality type and the type of professions that often fit under that personality type. This is the Utah Careers that we just talked about. This is what the web or the publication looks like, but you can get everything on the web. And as I said, in the center of that is that personality test to find the occupation that matches what your personality is. This is the Just For You site that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. www.justforyouth.utah.gov. There is a ton of information on this website. Information for foster youth, youth with disabilities, information for foster parents. You can take a look at this, and I know it's kind of difficult to read and small, but I would recommend getting on the site and looking at it. Pregnancy and parenting, transportation, legal, social, substance abuse, mental health, food and nutrition. There's a ton of information here for youth. There's also the employment part of it that I think has some great information, and that's why I really like to point it out. But for an all-around good site for youth, this is a great place to start looking.
Leah, can I add here, I use the Just For Youth a lot for graduation requirements to look at also the SEOP to go along with the individualized education plan, to have the kids look at what they're working towards in high school to get to where they want to be as a career.
Yeah, it's a great site.
And it talks about the colleges and links them up to, so you can look at the disability resource centers if the student's going on to college. So there's a lot of great things there with this site.
It's very encompassing, and I don't even think I found everything that's on there. Okay, I'd like to point out too that on the DWS site there's a link to Utah Cares, www.utahcares.org. If you're not familiar with Utah Cares, it's a pretty easy tool and way to find specific resources in the community. You can search by need, search by group, search by provider, find places to volunteer, which is a great resource for youth who want to get more experience to put, have something to put on a resume. I often recommend that you have maybe you're not working, but having a volunteer opportunity or having somebody who can vouch for your abilities and your willingness to be a hard worker is often good, especially for students who don't have that a long work history. And then there's also community service providers on there. It is linked up with 211, so you can also just get on the phone and call 211, but this is a web-based search tool for Utah Cares. Now, we talked about the workshops, so I'm not going to really go through those quite as much as I would on the slide. I guess I jumped ahead of myself, sorry. There is another workshop that I forgot to mention, Parenting That Works. There's a ton of great information. As I said, they're free. All the Department of Workforce Services offices offer workshops, and so you can find one close to you to attend. And then you can find the Employment Center on there by searching by zip code. This is the link for all publications, so it's an easy way to find all those publications we talked about, like tips for teams, the career guide, how interviewing skills, resume building, all those are listed in this publication site right there. Okay, we talked a little bit, Linda mentioned Choose to Work. I was a Choose to Work specialist prior to this position, so I really like to highlight Choose to Work and the service that exists there. Choose to Work is a service to employers and individuals with disabilities provided cooperatively between the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation and the Department of Workforce Services. It is a great cooperative agreement and program provided between these two agencies. So an individual would come through either vocational rehabilitation or Department of Workforce Services, an individual with a disability that needs a little more support. So they would have a VR counselor or a DWS counselor and then be referred to Choose to Work. The Choose to Work specialist would then take on working with that individual in support with those, with the counselors that they already have in place through the other agencies. And the employment specialist really works on connecting to employers, considering job opportunities, looking to help with individualized job development if necessary, really helping an individual with their resume, their interviewing skills, all those things that kind of need to be in place for an individual to get employment.
What about people who apply the Blind Center?
DSBVI, or Division of Services for the Blind and Visually Impaired, is under vocational rehabilitation, and we do provide Choose to Work services to those individuals as well as the deaf and hard of hearing. So really it is for individuals who are work ready, who have already got the training and education and those kind of things in place and are ready to go to work, but needs a little extra support to get through the interview process and get through the application process. So we're not looking, with Choose to Work, we're not looking at individuals who haven't decided what they want to do, that are not sure what jobs that they really want to look at. This is truly for individuals who have done some research, know what they want to do, have an idea, and just need the extra support to get through those steps of the resume interviewing part and really finding some employers that might have some openings. A couple other resources out there. Disability mentoring. It promotes career development for students and job seekers with disabilities through job shadowing and hands-on exploration. We're lucky this year to have Questar Corporation, who is doing the disability mentoring event this year at their second South location. They're allowing students and teachers to come out to their facility and have a tour of the facility and also get to sample a couple jobs. They have their office and HR department is sampling some jobs. Their AutoCAD department is sampling mechanics and their meter repair. So I really have an opportunity to talk to people at Questar about, if I want to work at Questar, what do I need to do? What kind of education or skills do I need? And get an idea of what the jobs are that are available through Questar. It really does help to create a pipeline of qualified workers for the employer, so that's why a lot of employers are involved in this. And it gives employers an opportunity to volunteer as mentors and to learn more about the experience of disability and assist students and job seekers to make career choices and offer internships. So we have, as I said, this great opportunity with Questar this year, and unfortunately it is tomorrow, so if you're interested, the students are already been assigned and are already online to do this, but the next Disability Mentoring Day will be in October of next year. And if you're interested, you can contact me and I can let you know who be the contact person to letting them know that you want to be involved next year. We also have a couple different employers that will come to Questar as well. Intermountain Healthcare, somebody, I believe, from Swire Coca-Cola will also be there to talk about their opportunities very quickly, even though it's not at their location, but to let them know that other experiences and opportunities are available. Employer networks. In Utah, we have a pretty active employer network, and nationally through vocational rehabilitation, there is an employer network that's building, and we really do cooperate and correspond with them nationally and regionally. An employer network is an active business connection built through relationship with employers. So my position as the employer relations specialist has really been key on building these employer networks in Utah. They are employers who have made a commitment to hiring and retaining people with disabilities, and they're aware of the USOR and VR services and supports that we provide to both the business and the client side. We really are looking at a dual customer approach. We in the past, vocational rehabilitation has really looked at that we serve individuals with a disability to get them employment and haven't really focused on the employer. But really, if we want individuals with disabilities to have high quality opportunities with employers, we need to provide some support to employers as well, and that's what we're looking at with these employer networks. This is a really long slide, and I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but this is a general description of the Utah Employer Network. I really like to point out that the purpose is to link employers and job seekers who have disabilities, and then the network employers have training and supports to understand how to recruit, hire, and retain individuals with disabilities. So we work with employers who possibly have an individual who's come to them and said, I have a disability and I'm struggling. Employers know that they can then help an individual get connected to us. We'll fast track them in, and if we can figure out accommodations or supports that either help them keep that job or help them with another job within the company, we will do that. It is something that we offer to employers. That we offer free training and education to employers based on the needs of the employer. And it really, what it does for the individuals with a disability is it provides a network of employers who really do understand disability and know that if they have a concern or problem that they can contact me, and if I don't know the answer, we'll find somebody who does and help them support them, help support the business in their desire to be diverse and hire people with disabilities. Now this is the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation website. And as if you see there on the left-hand side, a USOR employer network listing. This is where the PWD net employers post positions. They go through Department of Workforce Services, and then we are able to pull those off of the Department of Workforce Services links of the employers who are disability friendly. So you see that link right there. If you click on that, it will get you to a page that looks just like a Department of Workforce Services page, but these are employers who are listing with the PWD net, the People with Disabilities Network. It lists by date posted, so you can easily pull up, and look at the most recently posted, or look at jobs that are posted, further out. And then it posts by job title. So it lists them alphabetically here from the A's. If you're looking for welding, you definitely don't want to have to scroll through the whole thing to get to the W's. So you can then flip it and list it alphabetically from the other side and look at them, from that direction. So it does offer an opportunity that if you're looking for a specific job, that you can list them then alphabetically and not have to search through the jobs posted every day to try and find the accounting position. You pull it up and then pull all the accountants' positions up right there.
Is that self-explanatory as you're looking at this?
No. If you're familiar with the DWS website, yes, you would know that, but no, it is not. You'd have to let people know that anything blue is a clickable link. So where the job title, job number, date posted, all those are blue. Up in the top, back to login, DWS offices, those are all blue. So anything that's in a blue, and then of course all the job titles are listed blue because you can open up something there that'll tell you more about the job. So any of those blue things are a clickable link. And then it also lists by location and starting salary. So say you live in West Valley, you're really limited on transportation and you want to find positions open in West Valley, you can list them by location. And then if you want to be more specific about salary, you can look that way as well. We also have the preparation and job fairs, and at the end of the presentation there's a flyer and some other information about the job fair that we'll share, but the next job fair is Wednesday, October 28th. from 10 to 2, so that is next week, next Wednesday. It's at the Sanderson Center of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. It is not a job fair just for the deaf and hard of hearing. We get that a lot because it is at the Sanderson Center. It is targeting all individuals with disabilities. We really let employers know that some individuals are going to be in a career preparation mode. Some individuals are going to be ready right that day for a job. And so the employers are pretty aware of that. And with this current economy, we have asked employers to come as a career preparation employer. So we have specifically one of the employers is Marriott Guest Services. In the past, they've hired quite a few individuals with disabilities, but currently they're not hiring. They are coming to the job fair, though, as a career preparation employer. They'll be there to talk to individuals who are currently looking for employment or currently looking at what they might want to do for employment, to talk to them about, if you want to work for Marriott, here's what you need to do. Here's the skills and abilities you need. Here's the type of personality we're looking for. This is what we really would like to have in place so an individual has an opportunity to better prepare themselves for future opportunities with Marriott. Also, they'll be there to look at resumes, give feedback on resumes, give feedback on other information that a client might need to help them get a job. All of these employers have received some training and education on hiring and retaining people with disabilities. They know the support's out there, and they really are coming because they do want to diversify their workforce, and they are willing to work with and hire and retain people with disabilities. Now, here's some more specific information on what employers are looking for. I've been talking to employers, other information I've read. These are some of the key components that employers like to see. A positive attitude, coming in and being actively involved and wanting to be there. Punctual. This is a huge issue for employers. A lot of times, students and individuals who haven't worked in a long time, sometimes they forget that being punctual as a job is very, very important. Good attendance, following policies and procedures. This is important. Being willing to listen. A lot of times oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm coming in there. I've got it all figured out. But being willing to listen to people that you work with and your supervisors. Learn all you can about the job and meet expectations. This is, as you're first coming into a position, this is the perfect opportunity to ask as many questions as possible. How do I do this? When do you need this done? How would you like it done? Really getting those questions answered in the first, 90 days of employment is very important. Communication. Be prepared for communication with supervisors. Check in. A lot of times, new employees often think, well, I don't want to hear from my supervisor because that means something's wrong, and that's really scary, and I don't want to think anything's wrong. But really, those first 90 days, you want to be checking in with the supervisor. You want to be saying, what am I doing well? What am I not doing well? What more do you need? And sometimes this is very difficult, but it is something that I recommend that we help our students understand that it's important to check in with supervisors. Be a team player. Communicate with your coworkers. A lot of times, you get confused about, well, how much communication is too much, and should I be talking when I shouldn't be talking? And you've got to really guide that and gauge it. But being a team player, and if you don't have something to do, asking a coworker, hey, do you need some help? I've finished what I needed to do. Oftentimes that comes back and pays back twofold, because when you need some help, that coworker is going to step back in and help you. Ask for help when you need it. If you don't understand something, if you don't get it, please ask for help. It's never going to serve you well to just keep trying and trying and trying if you don't know how to do it. The next one, following the proper chain of command. This is a big deal for supervisors. Oftentimes supervisors, if you haven't communicated to them first and you go above and beyond them, you are really putting yourself in jeopardy of not being looked at as a favorable employee. I know there's situations that might not always be the case, that you can go to your chain of command and follow that chain of command, but in most situations you should follow that as best you can. Here's some personal things that employers are looking for. I always recommend prior to starting a position that you have most of your personal appointments completed. Medical, medication management, other appointments that might be out there, that you try and get those done before you start the job. So for the first 90 days that you have as few appointments as possible. Sometimes that's not always possible. There are going to be times and situations where you might have to make more appointments during the time of your first 90 days, but trying to get as many of those done in the beginning is really important. Be willing to learn. You do not know everything. You do not know how this employer likes stuff done. It is to your best advantage to have an open mind and go in willing to learn what they have to offer. One example is the call centers. We have a huge call center market in Utah, and I hear a lot from these call centers that, well, this individual came from Discover Financial and now they're working for Convergys. They think they know what we want them to do because they're both call centers. Unfortunately, that's not accurate. Convergys is completely different than Discover. They handle their calls differently. They handle the customer service requests differently. You need to be willing to learn how that new company that you're working for handles situations. Make new friends. This is a great opportunity to meet people, to get to know people. Take your breaks with people. Take your lunch with people. I know that's hard. I know that's scary. But the more natural supports and other people you have within a workforce, the better you're going to do. If you isolate yourself in the beginning, it's going to be much more difficult for you to be successful. Be cleaned and well-groomed. Create the image. This one is very, very important. I've had employers tell me that if they have an individual come in dressed in sweatpants to pick up an application, that the frontline individual writes down, so-and-so came in sweatpants, and you are immediately disqualified from anything else with that employer. You need to remember the first time you meet an employer, you need to be prepared and ready for an interview. If they offer it, that's great. Take the interview then. That means probably they need somebody right now, and you can sell yourself at that time and hopefully get a job. But if you go in looking like you just crawled out of bed, you really are setting yourself up for failure. Keep your personal life and problems at home. This one is another huge one for employers. You come in talking about, especially for teens, you come in talking about dating and, I went on this date and this happened and these people did that, and that's never professional and never appropriate. Keep that for, time after work, time off of the work site. Really, employers do not want to hear it. They don't want it to create a problem for you at the workplace. And, you've got to be careful about the relationships you form at work. They should be friend relationships, but a lot of times having personal relationships or, intimate relationships at work is not always a great idea. Be patient with yourself and your employer. There's a learning curve. That first 90 days and sometimes that first 6 months is difficult for both the employer and for yourself. So really understanding that this is an opportunity and a time for you to learn. You're not going to know everything. You can't expect to know everything when you go in, and you really just need to give it an opportunity to sink in. And then volunteer. Step up for stuff when it comes up. When the supervisor or your trainer or somebody asks for a volunteer, be willing to step up and volunteer. It shows some initiative. Getting along with others. Okay, here's some really key points here. Do not express your opinion, biases, or prejudices about others while at work. Again, keep that for off-work time. Accept criticism as constructive. Your supervisors don't want to cut you down. They don't want to make you feel bad. They're giving criticism on a reason to try and better you in employment so that they can keep you retained. If you talk to employers, the cost of hiring a new individual is huge. They do not want to have to let somebody go and hire somebody else. If they've got you trained partially, if they're working on training you, it really is to their benefit to keep you on board. So when they're giving you criticism or when they're talking about things that you might need to improve, it's not them trying to cut you down. It's them trying to let you know what you need to do to be successful with the company. Always be friendly. This goes back to customer service. I know that's difficult, but the friendlier and more positive your attitude, the better you're going to do. I really like this one. Notice who your boss relies on and model yourself after them. If your boss has a specific person they go to, their go-to person, kind of look and see why do they go to them? What is it that they're looking for with this person? What does this person give them? And then try to model those behaviors, because then you might become the next go-to person for your supervisor. And then when you're the go-to person, they do not want to let you go. Find a mentor. Talk to that go-to person. Hey, I really want to know what I need to do to be successful in this company. Find somebody else who's worked there for a while. Ask them questions. Allow for them to mentor you. Treat everyone with courtesy and respect. Keep your emotions under control. Show appreciation, and then strive to be positively recognized. So again, be that go-to person. Here's some suggestions on how students can best prepare. I always suggest you begin planning in high school or before for the transition to work. You can't expect upon graduation that you're going to be ready to go to work if you've done nothing to get there. You need to use your educators and natural supports for assistance in identifying programs in your schools. So really looking at what do my schools have available, what teachers are there that I might be able to ask questions about career fields. Really looking at what's in your school system to help support you. Using the IEP process to help make the connections and plan to facilitate the transition. So if your student's starting to say, hey, I might want to do this, I'd really like to do this, and start talking to teachers about, hey, they're talking about this, they're really good at these things, and trying to figure out, like I said, use a career letter. Look at DWS as their website and see if there's a connection between what they're good at and what they can get to. And then talk to teachers about, this is where we're starting, but this is where we want to get to. How do I get that process and connect the dots? Utilize agencies that assist in job identification and job search. Department of Workforce Services. Take the students to Department of Workforce Services and give them an opportunity to see what they have and the services that are there. Get on the website. Really look at what's out there. Now that DWS's hours happen to be the longer hours, there's time after school to possibly get there. Teachers can feel free to take students down there if they'd like to take them. It's a great resource, and I think it's often underutilized by students. Be your own advocate. I really talk a lot about being an advocate for yourself, not just for students, but for any individual with a disability. If you cannot advocate for yourself, there's a lot of times not a lot of people who can. So I talk to students, I talk to parents about helping their students understand how to advocate for themselves. Understanding their disability, understanding how it affects them, and also understanding the accommodations that are out there that work for them is important. I've recommended to individuals who have applied for positions, if they have a very obvious disability, that they write a letter that talks about, yes, I have a disability, this is how it affects my life, but here is what I do to accommodate for my life in my disability. Here's what I use at home, here's what I use at work, here's how I do the job. Because a lot of times in an interview, you're not going to get a chance to say that, but you can leave it behind. You can give them an opportunity to read it, an opportunity to look at it. A student who knows their disability and knows their accommodations and knows how those accommodations work is going to be much more successful than a student who has a disability and has no idea how to explain how it affects their life and how they can be successful.
Leah, can I ask you quickly, do you come across a lot of students that have just graduated out that really don't know how to advocate for their disability? And
yes, we run into a lot of students who have been very sheltered through their education and home process and are not ready for the world in any way, shape, or form, and they've often relied on a parent or a teacher to explain their disability, and that doesn't allow them to then be independent and be able to support themselves as they need to. And I know different disabilities are different levels. You're going to have certain students who might be able to explain it a lot better than others. Giving them as much autonomy as possible to do that and helping them understand it the best they can and explain it the best they can is really going to benefit them in the future.
Thank you.
Now here's some things that families can do. Do you have another question? Okay. Some things families can do. I recommend assisting with identifying the appropriate employment to pursue. You know your student, you know your child, you know what they're good at, you know what they're not so good at. You know, I have twin 9-year-old boys that are very tiny for their age, and they keep telling me they're going to play NBA because, yeah, they play basketball okay, but Mom, I'm going to be an NBA star. Honey, you know, love you to death, and you can play all you want for fun, but you're short. What else can you do with basketball? Could you be a coach? Could you be, own a team? Could you do this? Could you do that? So really talking about the other options that are out there and being realistic about it. So looking at what skills and abilities they have, what they're good at, what they like, and then looking at the career ladder that comes with that. Encourage your young adult to assume household tasks, work part-time, and or assume volunteer positions. This is what I just mentioned to you. They're often sheltered. You know, oh, they have a disability. They can't do that. I don't want them to not be able to do it and not be successful. And I'm just going to shelter him and keep him at home, and I'll take care of him, and I'll be here forever. I'm sorry to inform you, you're not going to be here forever. Your child needs to know how to do some of these things on their own, and I know it's difficult. I know it's difficult to put some of these tasks and some of these things on your students, but the more experiences they have in life, the more opportunities they have, the better they're going to do in the future. Relate the real world to the school world. Compare tasks at work to tasks at school. And I often tell teachers this as well. But looking at how, with my kids, I often, bring work home. And I stand there like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have homework too. Just like you have homework, I have homework. And it's important for both of us to get our homework done. Talking about different things in chores or different ways you set up your home life that could then transfer over to the work environment. Right now, I'm the supervisor. You're doing the chores. Your job is to get your chores done, and this is what I expect you to do with your chores. I'm going to come back as a supervisor. I'm going to check it, and if it's not right, we're going to ask you to redo. So kind of looking at how can you open up what home life, school life is to what the real world might look like. Now, here's some things educators can do. Provide a variety of work experiences for young adults while they're in high school. So Disability Mentoring Day is a great opportunity. Teachers need to connect to employers. The employers in the area around your school, talking to them about possibilities of coming out and touring the site, having an employer come out and talk to the students about what they're looking for. A lot of times, just like, when you talk to your own child, they don't listen to you, but if they hear it from somebody else, they're like, okay, yeah, I guess that's not so crazy. So having an employer come out and talk to students oftentimes makes a bigger impact than having a teacher talk about it. Discuss competitive employment at an early enough stage that timely and appropriate actions are taken to reach the goal. Again, you cannot graduate from high school and jump right into work. You need to have prepared yourself. You need to start looking at opportunities and experiences, and really you need to have something to put on a resume. Whether it be volunteering, whether it be somebody who you know through the community, who's seen what you do and can be a reference. These are great things to look at having students do and have available and ready to put onto a resume when they're ready to go to work. And then I talked about this briefly with the parents. Think about how you run your classroom. You're the supervisor in the classroom. You shouldn't be allowing students to utilize their cell phones in the classroom or texting in the classroom, because in a work environment, a boss is not going to let that fly. And if as a teacher we're letting that go, we're not preparing students to what's going to happen in the real world with the workforce. How can you model your class after the working world? I've suggested a curriculum maybe where you do a month-long project or a month-long something where you're, okay, for this month, I'm the boss. You guys are going to be the workers. Each of you are going to have a different task. Some of you are going to be writing reports. Some of you are going to be doing some production, this, that, or the other. How can you model what's happening to get a project done through the working world eyes? Connecting to schools is important. Connecting to teachers. These are things employers can really do to help make partnerships work. Provide a variety of work experiences for young adults, and allow for opportunities for sampling of competitive employment. So, letting students come into your work site if that's a possibility. Of course, some sites, for safety reasons and other things, don't allow that. But if your business allows it, let that happen. If you're a parent of a child, maybe talking to your boss or supervisor about allowing a classroom of kids to come in. Oftentimes we don't look at the networks we have out there. You're looking at what you can do for your student, but you haven't thought about asking your boss if it's a possibility for your student, your child, to come and see what you do. Do you have any questions? I'm going to get here's my contact information, the next slide here. I think it will go there. There's a toll-free 800 number, my direct line, address, and email. And then we did add on here at the end some information about the job fair. It's a little hard to read, but this is the Workability Job Fair that's coming up on the 28th. We just had one more employer that I got an email from as I was driving here. Hill Air Force Base is added. So we have the Bureau of Land Management, Sears, UPS, Intermountain Healthcare, FedEx, Questar, IRS, Valley Services, Verizon Wireless, Convergys, Discover Financial, the Work Activity Center, Utah School for the Deaf and Blind, UWise.biz, which helps individuals who might want to start their own home career or be their own boss kind of thing. University of Utah Disability Law Center will be there as a reference and a resource. Geneva Rock and then Marriott Guest Services will be there as a career preparation employer, as we talked about. They don't have any current positions open, but they're willing to look at resumes, talk to individuals, provide support and information to help them understand how to be better prepared for the career market as it comes up. So we talked about bringing a current resume, preparing before you come, being prepared for an interview. We have had spot interviews at times at the job fair, being dressed professionally. At the job fair, businesses give out candies and kind of the swag, the goodies. We recommend you don't run around like a kid at a candy store and gather those up. If you happen to talk to an employer, feel free to pick something up. But being professional and not looking like you're greedy and want the candy is the only reason to be there is very important.
How about if a group of students are coming or the teacher wants to bring in a group of students for the job fair and they're high school age?
We do have a curriculum for teachers if they're interested in bringing their students, and we do recommend that it's a 5-to-1 ratio, so 1 staff to every 5 students, partly to help keep it professional. We don't want to dilute the experience for individuals who are truly job seeking, but we have let these employers know that there are various levels of individuals coming through. Some are just doing career preparation and search. Some are actually job ready at that moment. So if you're interested in the curriculum, you can email me and I can get you the contact information of the person who has that curriculum. If it's a student with a school, we would like an educator to come with them. If a parent would like to bring a student, then we can also share that curriculum and get that information to a parent who might like to bring their child. And then the last slide here is workshops. These workshops are free. They're in conjunction with the job fair. The first one is at 10:30, and it's SSI, SSDI, Medicaid and Working, and the Director of Workability will be presenting on that. So they'll talk about how do you manage working and keep your Social Security benefits and your medical benefits and all that stuff, and then how do you transition when you do become full-time employed and have those opportunities with an employer. 11:30, Kathy Daly and her group will be doing a WISE event, which will be talking about benefits planning, how to, again, more about your benefits and how to work with Social Security and Medicaid and all that kind of stuff that comes into play when you go to work. And then 12:30, we have 2 individuals from the Department of Workforce Services who will talk about interviewing and answering tough questions. And they'll be available for questions as well. And then at 1:30, we have the Disability Law Center. We have Allison Smith, who will talk about employee rights. So your rights as an employee as you're working. Any other questions?
So for the people that might listen to this webinar later on, if it's already past these events, they could still call Workability to see if there are new events coming up.
Yes.
Future events.
We actually have the job fair biannually. So we have a job fair every April and every October. And then we have an employer workshop that precedes the job fair events in March and September. The employer workshop is a half-day workshop for employers who are interested in learning more about hiring and retaining people with disabilities. So those employers that come to the workshop typically then come to the job fair. That's how we make sure that the employers are trained and educated about hiring and retaining people with disabilities and make sure that they truly are disability friendly.
So as a parent then, if you work for a particular employer and you want them to become more familiar, that's a workshop that you could refer them to help your student with a disability or your young adult with a disability.
Yes, and I also, since my position is in a state position, I can come out to any employer and do training and education for employers, whether it be the Human Resource Department or if they just want their general staff trained on disability etiquette. I can cater a training program to the employer and what they might need. So feel free to contact me if you have questions or you would like that to happen for your employer. Any other questions?
That's a lot of information.
I don't expect you to remember it all. Feel free to contact me if you have questions or concerns. My contact information was in there. I'd be happy to answer any of those.
But it's excellent information. I think Louise has a question.
I can remember very good that back on the slide that talks about the slide on the usor.utah.gov, those list of job openings, Are they jobs only for people with disabilities, or are they jobs for anyone?
They're jobs for anyone, but the employers are people with disability network employers, so they're employers who have made a commitment to hire and retain people with disabilities. So they are not just for individuals with disabilities, but these employers are open to and have hired people with disabilities. You know, when I talk to employers, if I ask them, will you hire people with disabilities, oftentimes you're not going to hear a no, because they know that there's litigation possible there. So we really are looking at developing a network of employers who have committed to, have attended training. We have seen a commitment from in the PWD network. So those employers have received the training and education, have the support of me, know that they can contact me if there's a problem, a question, or concern. And so I feel confident in saying that these employers are open to hiring people with disabilities. The other option is I do have an email distribution of job postings that I can send out at times. It does go to voc rehab counselors in particular, but if you'd like more information about that, you can contact me as well.
And Leah, one of the things I think we hear a lot from parents is they're frustrated because they didn't realize during the transition years to get some of those skills developed that they should have, and now they're seeing their son or daughter go onto the job market and they don't seem to have the interview skills, even the job application skills, or they're not getting on time, or they're grooming, or different things like that. And does DWS help with that, or what do we tell parents as far as helping their child to get prepared for those type of skills?
Department of Workforce Services would have the basic workshops, the basic things, but they're not really, I mean, though they do serve people with disabilities, they're dealing with the general population and might not have the necessary knowledge or abilities to really work directly with an individual with a disability. At that point, I would suggest the individual connect with vocational rehabilitation and work with a vocational rehabilitation counselor to help with the supports and services that might be needed to help them prepare themselves for work. So, you know, the restorative stuff would come into play, and the mental health counseling, the other things that might come into play to get them to a place that they can do the training and education, then getting them through a training and education program, and then proceeding to work. So it would give them a little bit more time to try and hone those skills and have some support of a vocational rehabilitation counselor. And then choose to work is also an option, but they'd need to come through voc rehab or DWS for that as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, we want to thank Leah for doing this workshop. It was a lot of information to now go back on the internet sites and check out these different websites, and to realize that there is a lot out there that we can do as parents and professionals to help individuals with disabilities as young adults and adults to receive employment. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.